Welcome back to the weekend preview. It's time now to turn our attention to Boxing Day's tea time kick-off here in the UK. Aston Villa taking on Chelsea. Can Steven Gerrard's informed side get a result against a Chelsea team who've fallen off the pace a little in recent weeks? Let's hear from both managers, Thomas Tuchel, but first, here's Gerrard himself.
We'll always prepare for the best team in terms of the opponent. If for any reason it's not a strong Chelsea team, then we'll deal with that. But what I would say is, they've got a world-class squad littered with world-class players, so I'm sure if they've got enough to carry the fixture out, we're going to find that the Chelsea team's really strong. I'm sure I'll get a little bit of stick off the Chelsea fans, but I certainly welcome that, part of the banter of the game. Now, this is very much not about me and my playing days against Chelsea. It's very much about Aston Villa and Chelsea, which is completely different.
This is actually quite exciting. I watched it when I was not involved. I watched it during Christmas and New Year, the Premier League. So now I'm in the middle of it. Actually, I like it, and it's nothing new to play 3 matches in a week. To play 3 matches in a week without 9 or 10 players, that is challenging the situation itself. We would love to be involved in all these competitions, and love to have the challenge with everybody. This is not the case.
Well, this looks like a really interesting tie because of the two teams' differing forms at the moment. Chelsea have slipped recently, Tim. Aston Villa are on the up. But when you look at the table, for Chelsea, they're 6 points off the top, but Arsenal are actually only 6 points behind them. So are they looking up or are they looking over their shoulder?
I think they're looking up. They've had a dip, without doubt. You know, even if they haven't got beat, they've dropped 2 points in a few games. But if you're Steven Gerrard, you're relishing this. I mean, you've got a depleted squad coming towards you, because Thomas wants to tell us every minute he gets that his squad is depleted. But I'm not sure there's too many of us feeling sorry for him out there, because he's got a whole squad full of world-class players. But if I'm Gerrard and that group of players, even if there's a few missing, Stephen's right. You've got to prepare for the best Chelsea coming towards you. You don't know. They've got world-class players. They can turn it on whenever they want. But you just look for an edge. Look for an edge in the man. Look a little bit of confidence low. And I think at the moment, this confidence is certainly not high, Chelsea. If you can go ahead against them, I think it gives you a real chance, especially with rejuvenated Aston Villa.
1 win in the last 4 matches for Chelsea. Do you agree with Tim? Is this a good time for Aston Villa to face them?
Yeah, definitely. But I still don't think it's a disaster. I think the form that Chelsea had been in previously has been fantastic, and it was only the beginning of the year. Most people were saying getting Lukaku would mean they're going to win the league. So it's one of those things where it's like, yes, they've not been on a great run, but they're still a top team. And I think in the Premier League now, you drop a couple of points, you can't afford to do that if you want to win the league, can you? So I still think they're still a great team, and I still think this game, yes, it's probably the good time to play against them, but I still think Chelsea will win.
Jules, you've studied Thomas Tuchel probably a bit closer than most of us have when he was at PSG as a manager there. Did he ever have a slump like this, and how did he react to it and get a response out of his players?
Not really, not in this way, in the sense that he doesn't understand how those individual mistakes have happened. The likes of Jorginho against United, against West Ham away especially. He finds that really frustrating, because he doesn't think that the issue or the mini crisis, if you want, is anything structural, something wrong with the team, for example. They still create enough chances. We saw that against Everton, where I think the XG was 2.4 and Everton XG was 0.3, and they drew 1-1. But there's clearly something missing. I think Conte was a big loss, and Tuchel admitted it. He said this is not the same team with Conte or without Conte, with the ball, without the ball. And they concede far many goals when he's not there than when he's there. So I think this is one thing, but everybody has players missing and injured. So he needs to find answers, and pretty quickly, because if you look at the fixtures, 2nd of Jan is home to City and home to Liverpool. 15th of Jan is away at City. By mid-Jan, they could be out completely of the title race, like literally completely. So he needs to find answer pretty quickly.
Do you echo that, Tim? Because you obviously can't win the league at Christmas, but you can lose it.
Absolutely, you can be out of it. Jules is absolutely spot on. I talked about the head-to-heads early on the show, you know, with Man City. You know, they smell blood. Man City smell blood, and so will Liverpool. And they're not listening to all the noise about COVID this, COVID that. No, don't worry. Get on with the job. Beat these and put them to bed. If they lose them 2 games, And listen, this one going to do them no favours if they lose this one, by the way. But if we're talking about them beating the rest and then coming up to the head-to-heads, you need some confidence. You need some confidence going in. You don't need to drop points because you're certainly out of it. Then you're looking to be, are we going to hang on for the top 4? Because everyone else is coming up on the rails. So massively important. You're absolutely right. Can't win the league, but you can certainly lose it by February.
Leanne, when you mentioned Lukaku a moment ago, it just reminded me that the last goal he actually scored for Chelsea in the Premier League was against Aston Villa in the reverse fixture. That feels like such a long time ago. It was back in September. How important is it to have him back and have him firing? Because even when he has been playing recently, in and out of injury, he's not looked the same.
No, he hasn't. And, you know, I was a big fan of Lukaku when he was at Manchester United. I think at times people often question his first touch and stuff like that, but I just didn't think he ever seemed really that happy there. No. But I think at Chelsea, I think it made sense, the signing that they needed. But I think they're too heavily reliant upon Mason Mount. I really do. I think if Mason Mount doesn't seem to play, Chelsea don't seem to tick. And obviously we mentioned Kante as well, another obviously world-class player. But certain players just, I mean, Trevor Chalobah's actually relatively done well. You know, he's brought Loftus-Cheek back into the frame. I mean, who would have ever thought that? And I think Loftus-Cheek is a good player, but I don't think he's necessarily the answer to what Chelsea need. Pulisic's had a lot of injuries, you know, but I don't think Thomas Tuchel necessarily knows his best 11. And I think that is a big problem sometimes, because defensively, when Thiago Silva came, fantastic player. I mean, people talk about age, and I think we have this ageism sometimes in football where we talk about Cristiano Ronaldo, Thiago Silva being a certain age, but it doesn't matter, because defensively he's fantastic, and I wish he came to the Premier League a lot sooner. But I just think their best 11, I don't think Thomas Tuchel seems to have that down yet. And differently, Pep doesn't have to have the same 11 every week, but it's a completely different team, but they seem to be able to get the results. So it'll be interesting to see what Tuchel does now, because you're right, Tim, making these excuses about injuries. Chelsea's squad, I mean, come on, they have a third of... Conor Gallagher's still out on loan. There's loads of players. Billy Gilmore, there's loads of players that are still out on loan.
The biggest gripe I think they can have, Leanne, is Chilwell. He was flying with Reece James. They were scoring goals from both sides, weren't they? The wing-backs. And he's put Alonso in there and playing exactly the same way. Now, Pep wouldn't do that because Alonso is not Chilwell. You know, he hasn't got the legs to be able to do that. He's a good player. He can balance them off the left. We know he can score goals himself.
But defensively, he's not as good.
He's not going to get up and down like Chilwell does. So sometimes you have to tweak it. And I think he's found it difficult. Obviously, Timo Werner's not been there, not been available. Kai Havertz, so they haven't really done it. Ziyech, they haven't really settled into a Chelsea shirt up to now. I need Lukaku back in. I think he is a good signing. I think he proved to be a good signing. And that is why they'll finish third in the league. Because of Lukaku. They won't be looking down because I think they'll get him fit enough to score enough goals to keep him up there challenging.
OK, as for Aston Villa, 4 wins for Steven Gerrard out of the 6 matches in the Premier League, and those 2 defeats were against Manchester City and Liverpool. So not a bad start for him. What do you think the biggest improvement has been?
Well, I think with the ball, I was at the Arsenal game for Villa when they lost 3-0, and Dean Smith tried something different, but when I look Matty Cash now and the Steven Gerrard, and I look the Matty Cash earlier this season, I think it's different. He touches the ball far more in the opposition box. And it's exactly like James Tavernier used to play for Rangers. I think Stevie G relies a lot on his fullbacks. And in the 2 years at Villa, they're very good for what he wants them to do. But certainly, I think the momentum has changed completely there. I think Ollie Watkins is different player under Steven Gerrard than he was with Dean Smith this season, I mean. And they're doing a lot of good things. The game at Liverpool was a scrappy affair because I think he just wanted to defend. Maybe that was a wrong approach. They're doing a lot of good things. The game at Liverpool was a scrap. And City, as we've been saying. So I think he's done really well, and I expected him to do so well because I thought he was really good at Rangers.
So when we saw that defensive approach against Man City and Liverpool, do you think he'll do the same in this game, or do you think he'll change that tactic?
Well, I thought they were competitive in them games, but I never really felt they were going to go and win. So maybe Stevie will have a look at it and think, you know what, Chelsea are having a little bit of a dodgy period. Maybe we can go for the throat a little bit. I think he'll do that because you'd have to say, we know how difficult it is to win games in the Premier League, but he's won the games you'd expect him to win. And the ones you expect him to lose, they've lost. Now, this is another one you'd expect him to lose. So he needs to tick that box. At the moment, I think he's done a good job. He's obviously given him a lift from where Dean Smith left them. But I think it's a really, really important game for them. And I think they're capable of getting something out of the game. I'm not sure if it can be a victory.
Does it make it more impressive, the victories he's got and the changes that he's made to this team, Leanne, that he's done it all throughout what is a really difficult time in the Premier League with players missing, injuries as well, but also the fact he's not had a transfer window yet. So come January, he'll have the opportunity to maybe add what he thinks this squad needs.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying before, like to Tim, that when I look at Steven Gerrard, to me, he looks like a real manager that has longevity in managerial. I mean, it only seems like yesterday he was playing, which a lot of managers have gone quickly into. You know, we see Ole Gunnar Solskjaer managing, and it seems like only yesterday he was playing for Man United. But when I see Steven Gerrard, the way he conducts himself, he seems to be a real top manager. He can go on to be a top manager. But I do think I will judge this more based upon the end of the season, because when a new manager comes in, you're vibrant, you want to prove it. It is Steven Gerrard, arguably one of the best midfielders ever. And you are going to be thinking, oh my God, it's Steven Gerrard, he's my manager. But I will judge them at the end of the season. But I do think they need to strengthen a little bit. I think Ollie Watkins is good, but he's not proven to get you double figures every season. But players like John McGinn, I mean, these are the types of players that I think go under the radar a little bit, because he's fantastic for Aston Villa, he really is. And he's a player that does a lot for them. I think a lot of the work that not many players want to do. And offensively, I think he's very good as well. But I just think that I'll judge them at the end of the season. They're doing very well. I do think it's a good time they're playing against Chelsea. But I still think when a new manager comes in, everybody wants to prove them right. But we'll have to judge them at the end of the season.